No, big applause.
Hi, hello. Thank you so much for being here with us on this beautiful Saturday afternoon in Greece. We're very excited to have this conversation with you about one of my favorite topics, augmented reality, or mixed reality, immersive media as a whole, also called XR, and how we'll be consuming media in the next decade. My name is Carol Shainon. I'm the COO and co-founder of JYC, an augmented reality startup. We're based in Los Angeles, and we also have a presence in London and Paris. I will be your moderator today, and I'm very pleased to be here with my two panelists, Dan Pacheco, professor at Syracuse University in Syracuse, New York, and Diogo Queiroz de Andrade, former deputy editor-in-chief for Publico in Portugal. So we'll start with a quick introduction from our two guests. So Diogo, please.
Hi, I'm a journalist. I'm an editor with experience in print and broadcast. I spent the last decade worrying about digital journalism, and I'm currently developing a prototype of hyperlocal news in augmented reality. It has a Google DNI support. I'm just starting working on it, and I'm also doing a PhD on AR. So it's basically that.
I'm Dan Pacheco. I'm a professor and chair of journalism innovation at the Newhouse School at Syracuse University. And my job is really kind of about exploring new technologies that could be used for storytelling and journalism in general. I've been doing that for 7 years. Before that, I worked in startups at the Washington Post when it first went online, and also America Online in product development.
Great, thank you. And so as mentioned in the intro, there's a wide spectrum of immersive media from 360 video to virtual reality to augmented reality. And it may be confusing to some people to know the differences between the different mediums and their strengths and weaknesses as well, and how they can be useful for news organizations. So we wanted to start with an introduction of the immersive landscape before we start our conversation. So then we'll do this right now.
Okay, so I'd like to use the term XR. You've probably never heard of this before. Think of it this way. XR makes it no longer necessary for you to say VR/AR/MR/whatever R. It's all the realities. And it's all about going beyond the rectangle. So what is a rectangle? I don't know if anyone's ever heard of this or read this story before, Flatland. It was about a flat square, two-dimensional creature who then decided or discovered from a sphere that visited that, wow, there's this whole other dimension out there, the third dimension. It was written 100 years ago or so. And you ask the question, why, we're all three-dimensional creatures. Why are we, while we live in three-dimensional space, all of our media is two-dimensional? It's because until now, it only could be two-dimensional. And 3 dimensions is our natural space. So in the last, roughly 5 years, there have been a variety of consumer devices that have finally caught up to that potential from virtual reality, Google Cardboard, Oculus. I think a lot of you have probably heard of that or tried those before. Those take you out of this reality somewhere else. You feel like you're transported somewhere. We're not going to talk about that today, but related to them are these mixed reality devices. So if you look in the lower right and in the middle, you have the Microsoft HoloLens and the Magic Leap. We actually have a Magic Leap right here, and these devices basically let you see, I can see you, I'm not taken out of this environment, and I can then walk around and interact with three-dimensional people, objects, even read things. Actually, JYC has something like that you could try upstairs if you have tried that. And so they do look a little silly. I think that's intentional, by the way. But they're getting more and more natural, more like glasses. And sort of in the middle of there is the idea of taking your phone and then looking at seeing, kind of getting the idea of what it might be like to see three-dimensional information in your world with you. Those two last two categories, this is AR, okay? And a lot of you may have tried that. We're going to talk about some examples. And then MR is this coming into your face through glasses. So that's how, all of that together is what we consider XR. So just to recap, VR, fully immersive, it transports you somewhere else. Your consciousness goes somewhere else. AR, you're seeing things almost like through a lens through your phone. And it's two-dimensional still, but there's three-dimensional data in there. And then MR, you're walking around those same AR objects, and they look and feel and act like they're in space. They can also see you, and they can interact with you. So Magic Leap is what I just put on my face. I just want to kind of close with this. Apple has been rumored for a while now to have some glasses that they're testing out. And this is one of their patent filings from a few years ago for their glasses. So imagine things looking a little less space-agey like this, and more like regular-looking glasses that maybe Bluetooth connect to your phone, or there's a small wire. And any AR app that you may see in your news app, you can then, if you have the glasses, it's just there. It feels like it's there with you in that room. HoloLens is Microsoft's foray into this area, and it's still a compelling product. They're coming out with a second version, but they kind of decided to focus on enterprise and productivity, and also, in a somewhat controversial move, focus on the US military. So they're now providing these AR headsets for the US military. There have been some protests by certain Microsoft employees, so it's kind of one of these areas. But HoloLens is still something that we kind of see these two being, all three of these, there will be different types of devices, and it's important not to get so focused on the devices and how they look, because those of us on this panel, we feel like this is really a whole new type of future for storytelling. It's not necessarily the future of everything, but it could be really compelling. So on the consumer end, imagine a new Star Wars movie comes out, then you can interact with C-3PO right there. That's possible now. This is no longer science fiction. This is from Magic Leap's original patent filing, where they show, hey, you have a whole bunch of screens anywhere you want them, and you can then choose your channels. It looks kind of futuristic and crazy. You can do that kind of thing on this device. So we'll give you opportunities after this session to try these out so you can understand what we've all experienced. And then, at some point in the future, will you really need a phone if a screen or interactivity or apps can be anywhere? Maybe you just pull your hand out and you just choose what you want to access, and it just comes up, and this is my screen, your screen is over there, right? Screens show up everywhere. I think Amy Webb talked about this a little bit in the first day. Magic Leap, really, they call this the Magic Verse. It's a little kind of gimmicky term, but imagine these different layers of collective information that go across the entire planet, where I walk through Athens, you walk through Athens, and if we're both interested in where the, I don't know, like the best souvlaki is, we're seeing that superimposed anywhere we look, and it's very natural with the glasses we put on. It's an idea that's been out there for a while. It's now actually possible, and there are companies putting billions of dollars into this. The same tech companies we've been talking about this whole week, Google, Apple, Microsoft, and then Magic Leap, which actually got over $1 billion from Google. That alone should tell you this is going to be a thing. How that plays out, the different types of content, how our content lives in this world, that's the big question. That's what we want to focus on today. So in these slides, which I'll show you right here, there's a URL at the bottom there. You can go to those slides. I'll tweet them out to the GEN hashtag as well, and we'll put some more information in there. But there's a lot of different ways to get started with this, and in the workshop, we'll kind of get into a lot of that. So I'll head back.
Thank you so much, Dan. I think this gives you an idea of what the immersive landscape is right now. And as Dan mentioned, everybody's very much looking forward to have those Apple glasses coming out soon. So now let's delve right into the heart of the topic. So what do you think will be the future of AR for storytelling and news media more specifically in the next decade? Diogo, yes, please.
Okay. First of all, we still don't know what is going to work, because no users are experiencing this in the real world right now, and as always, in terms of product, the users will command what will work and what will not. But what we do know is that there is a whole range of things to experiment and to try out, and that this is a real new media for journalism, and that we have to be present. Personally, as a journalist, I'm really worried that we make the same mistake again, and that we lose another opportunity to be early movers and to understand early the language of this new media. And so that's why I'm focusing on AR. Unlike Dan, who's a specialist on the entire spectrum of XR. I'm mostly focused on AR, but I've always been looking into all the experiences that have been done. There are a few things that we know right now that will probably work. We will have geolocation, so we'll be very well prepared to work with things that are around us at each given moment, and the spatial computing, the opportunity to access an immersive experience that puts every reader, every user, every consumer of news where the news is happening, opens a broad new spectrum of storytelling for anything that we really want to explain and to show people. One of the things the Reuters news report, digital news report mentioned is that we are not very good at explaining the news, explaining what is happening to our readers, to our consumers. I do really believe that these news technologies will help a lot in explaining things because they will give us context. They will give further meaning and better context to everything that we need to know and understand better.
This term that Diogo mentioned, spatial, it's really all about media moving into virtualized physical space. What does that mean? I think the best way to explain it is actually something that Magic Leap explained to me when they visited our university in a setting just like this. They said, so this is a classroom, okay, that they were envisioning, but I'm going to say, you know, it's this conference. Let's say that this is a conference about climate change, and it's sponsored by one of your publications to help people understand what's really causing you know, climate change. Very complex subject, right? And, you know, just like chemistry or something would be very complex. And so if you think of, you know, chemistry, you can see that when you pick up those physical 3D models, you know, of atoms and molecules, you understand it better, all right? So let's say that we're talking about, you know, what causes icebergs to melt at a much higher rate than scientists thought today. I could then tell you, all of you, okay, why don't you put your glasses on right now, and we're going to be there, okay? And we're all going to see each other, but suddenly, right up here, I'm on the iceberg, and then you start to see underneath what's going on with global currents. Up above, you see things happening with the jet stream, the polar vortex, all of that, and it's happening right here all around us. Media basically moves into our physical space, and where it can get even more immersive is building in the ability for other people who may not be here to I think Microsoft calls it holoportate. So they are transported into the empty seats between you are suddenly full of people who may be in Beijing or Los Angeles or, you know, anywhere else that has, you know, high connectivity. And then they're participating in that conversation, all right? It sounds really futuristic. This is all very close. And the only thing that's holding it back is consumer glasses that everybody has. The infrastructure underneath for three-dimensional immersive storytelling is happening already in app development on Apple and Android. So the kind of stuff that Diogo and Carol are doing. And so this is all related, but really, you know, if you can think of how, you know, with education that everything is moving into the space with us, and it's really, you know, immersive like that. Journalism needs to be a part of that because we have the same goals of educating people and helping them really understand.
Yes, fully agreed. And we experience our world in 3D dimension and we understand things better. So why not see the real things in 3D so that we can understand all these different topics? So we've seen a few news organizations already experimenting with AR. For example, the New York Times, through their mobile app, you can already try a lot of AR experiences, as well as the Washington Post. So why do you think AR is a good medium for consuming news content? What are its particular strengths compared to traditional media and compared to other immersive mediums for 360 or VR? Diogo?
Well, first of all, everybody will be using these devices, so it's a new media that's going to be massified very, very quickly, and we need to be there. As we need to be in every platform, we need to be there. That's the first reason we need to be there, because it will happen really fast. I know each and every one of us in this room has already been suffering with the speed that things change. This is another change that's coming up really, really fast, as I just said. And as Amy said the day before yesterday, we are moving very quickly into a screenless world. And that will happen not in 10 years' time, it will happen in less than that. I believe that in 5 years' time, this will be a pretty common experience for most users. So we really have to start trying out right now. In terms of how should we be there? Right now, we should be experimenting. Most newsrooms should, if possible, begin to think about it. How can their stories, their news, become interactive in this 3D space, become spatial, and how can we use all the geolocation references that we have and that we'll have around us in order to deliver better news with more context and more relevance to the users that will be using them in their everyday day-to-day lives.
Yeah.
I mean, I think it really just comes down to those stories that you may want to tell and you're at a loss for words. We've all had those moments where, and I think travel journalism is a perfect example of this. I talked to some travel journalists recently at a conference. The question I asked them is, what's one of the most amazing places you've been to? Either, positive, negative, really powerful, impactful, and you're at a loss for words. Even when you take pictures of it or video, it doesn't quite take you there. We no longer have to stop at that moment, right, and say, oh, you just had to be there. Now we can actually take you places, okay, that we captured, reality captured, so that's kind of one way to do it, or we can bring things to you. So there's something I'm going to show everybody in the workshop called photogrammetry. Really nerdy word, really powerful. It's the future of photos. You may not know this, but on all of your phones right now, you can download apps to create 3D model scans of anything that you can walk around and move around. And it just takes about 40 pictures. And you then get this 3D model, and then you can then upload that to certain websites and then embed them into your stories. It's really easy to get started now. This is not something that you have to wait on. But by getting that experience, now, it's really very important, I think, for every journalist to start developing an understanding of what it means to tell stories that are spatial. This word spatial computing, you're going to be hearing this a lot over the next decade. Actually, Mark Zuckerberg, a few years ago, said he sees that as being pretty much the next platform, that spatial computing is the future. Okay, so if Facebook is doing that, and then Google and others are putting all this money into this whole field, and Amazon too, by the way, is Washington Post owner, remember, sort of. They're also working behind the scenes. We see it. It's not very public. When it becomes public, I promise you're all going to be using it, and then you're going to be, if you haven't started to develop some expertise in just how you tell stories in physical space, you'll be behind. Just like what happened to a lot of us with mobile, right? When we say, okay, we moved from newspapers onto the web, and we thought, okay, the transition's over. And then, oh, that was yesterday's battle. Then everything went to mobile. Now it's moving into everything, okay? Which is why a lot of us say the cell phone probably goes away in about 10 years because content is everywhere around us, and it's a collective experience.
Yes, exactly. And I think if everybody remembers the movie Minority Report, we all thought that this was going to be something that happens in 2050. But I think within the next 5 years, as you showed in your slide, we'll be able to have content appear directly on our fingertips. So we've explored what works best and why AR is such a strong and powerful medium. But reversely, what do you think are areas where AR may not be best suited? And speaking about news specifically, what are some of the insights or best practices and experiments that didn't work out or need to be improved?
Well, long chunks of text will probably not work on these media, just for themselves. That's basically what we know right now. A Canadian researcher, Ellen Papagian, she mentions that this is the wet clay period of mixed reality. All of us that are working in the field are experimenting, are trying out new things, new methods to achieve that storytelling that we want. What we know is it will not work with a simple text on a screen because there will be a myriad of screens, so we will have thousands of screens. We'll have how many screens as we want around us. So we'll have to think differently. We have to think 3D. We'll have to think on things that will work. What doesn't work is what is not translatable to these new media with these characteristics. So it's just inverting what we know right now in this kind. So we know that text for itself will not work. We have to think about new languages. But this is not a drama. This is not something that is way ahead of us or really hard to think about. This is another tool for journalism, like data journalism, like video journalism. We don't have to make this much more difficult than it already is. It's not that complex to prepare and to convert the stories we have right now into this new media. It's not that difficult. We just have to think about the potential. We have to think about the ways the users are going to get these experiences and how can we improve them for the user, because this is not the salvation of journalism. Nothing is the salvation of journalism except journalism itself, obviously. But this is another language that we can add up to what we have, and another media that is going to be really, really widespread.
I think just like with any other medium, you touched on this a little bit, even just if you, let's say that you're in broadcast journalism, and I'll just say I don't think anyone here is, but let's say that that was our field. CNN actually already has an app on Magic Leap. Let me tell you, it's a pretty boring app. You can watch CNN videos on a screen that it's floating, okay? That's what we used to call shovelware. You want to remember that term back in from print to online? We're going to see a lot of examples of shovelware in this new immersive media. And I think that just because you can put stuff in, over into this platform, this immersive platform, because it's the easiest way to do it, that's the wrong way to think about it. Even just bringing in 3D content because you have it, well, if it's not really adding to people's understanding, then it's not worth it. So you really have to think hard, and I don't think this is a difficult exercise to go through, but you could maybe look at a package of 20 different stories from your publications, and then just look through there and start anything that you feel like the journalist is trying to describe what something is like, and they're having to get into great detail, whether it's something that's physical or let's say that it's complex process. It could even be financial data. I think there's tons of potential for visualizing financial data in 3 dimensions. The Wall Street Journal, there's an example of this from actually a couple years ago. They did this with Emblematic, it's up in the slides, of the Wall Street Journal showing their map of the market in a way that lets you see it on your tabletop, and then you can really see it all in 3 dimensions. And it's really about understanding. If seeing that map of the market has always been just a 2D screen in 3 dimensions, and being able to kind of look around it, aids in your understanding of the information and your retention, then it's worth doing it. And I'll just give you, I know we're supposed to talk about what doesn't work, but I want to tell you something that I've seen that does work, not in the news field, but it's related, which is in education. I had a grad student do a master's thesis about teaching Korean in an immersive way. And he basically, this was in virtual reality, but it would work in mixed reality as well. And he created a virtual room, and he had all these objects like, a teapot, coffee cup, shoes, pencil, right, throughout this room. And you move through the room, and you feel like you're in that room. And then with hand controllers, you pick the objects up, you hear the Korean word, and then you have to walk over and put it into a box that matches the same word that you saw. And then when it goes in there, then you hear it, okay? So there's many senses involved there. You see the word, you see the object, your brain thinks that it feels the object, interestingly, and then you hear it, and then you're moving through space, okay? In that study, he compared teaching Korean that way to learning Korean through something like Rosetta Stone, and it was a 50% increase in retention and understanding, okay? There are lots of studies that show this. This is not just a gimmick. If you want your brand to be the best at helping people really understand, you want to be like the Economist of immersive media, that should be good news for you. I mean, that should be enough to convince you to invest in this, because that's what our business is. I know there's been a lot of talk of business models, and I ran a startup. I understand you have to make money, but at the end of the day, if you're getting a lot of activity or you're making a lot of money, and people aren't actually understanding things better about the world, you failed. I feel like there's so much potential to increase people's real understanding about their world with these immersive media.
Let me just add up very quickly one thing. I think the potential for local and hyperlocal news is tremendous, because with the geolocated references, we know where the user is, and we can give him meaningful information. The experience we have right now with the notifications that we send every day, we send a lot of unuseful notifications for a lot of people. If we can add the meaning and just send the notifications that are meaningful for the right people at the right time, we will add up a layer of usability, of interest, of relevance to our news and to our content. And that is really able to make the difference in our presence in the citizens' lives.
Fully agreed. It's not doing AR for just the sake of doing AR. It's what's the added value for your users and your readers. And so in the past 5 years, we've seen immersive media go through the traditional hype and adoption cycle of new technologies, starting with 360 video and VR that were both considered the future of storytelling at some point. But adoption has been slower than expected, and today some observers might say that the predictions were unmet. So with AR, we're not quite dealing with the same barriers of entries as everyone is equipped with a cell phone and they can have access to AR directly at their fingertips. But right now, this often entails downloading an app, having access to your camera, and unlike the late 2000s, we don't want to have more apps on our phones. And this is just one example of potential break for AR adoptions. So what do you think are the technological advancements, both in software and hardware, that need to happen within the next decade so that we actually reach this future? Dan?
I mean, first of all, I'm a big believer in, I love the fact that there's all this content that works with your phone and AR. Having that be visible in just simple glasses, where someone who has the glasses, it's truly value added. It's the same content, but you can move through it. I think that's when we're going to see this go, the adoption will go pretty wide, and then people will then have what they used to call the swimming pool moment. There was a time when nobody had a swimming pool in their neighborhoods, and then the first people got them in the 1950s, and everyone was like, why would you ever get a swimming pool? And then a few years later, after many swimming pool parties, and everybody wanted a pool. I think we'll see that with, the nice, hip, whether it's Apple or someone else, glasses that are lightweight that lets you then, so, I can look at that app you're looking at here, and you can walk through it. That's pretty cool. But I think, I like what you said about apps, okay? I hope everyone knows this, but the average number of apps that people install per month, anyone know what that number is? 0, okay? People are not downloading new apps. So I think it's incredibly important for whether it's AR or MR or any of this stuff to be accessible through the open web. Mozilla is actually doing a lot in this area right now, and there's something that I'll show later called A-Frame that lets you start creating simple VR or AR content today. And I think the more I mean, honestly, I think that all of these publications that you have could really help drive adoption of open web, immersive VR. If you adopted it, then you have the audience, right? We don't have to just rely on Google to drive audience for everything, or Apple. I mean, we have audiences. So just by saying, if you have this specific browser on your phone, and it's Safari or Firefox, or I'm sorry, Firefox or Chrome, you can actually interact with AR today, but it has to be content there that works, right? And that's the problem that we solve. Tech companies aren't going to do that.
Yeah, well, we need open standards. That's first and foremost. We cannot sustain another siloed world where the Android experience is not equivalent to the iOS experience. That cannot happen. So we need browsers that allow us to access the Internet of Everything, not apps, as Dan said, browsers. That's what we need. We need the open AR cloud, so common settings open for everybody to work on. We'll also need very quickly some kind of, I don't know if you remember the first few days of the web and well, not the first few days, but when we were developing websites and we had the Dreamweaver software package, something like that, to ease the production of experience in AR. That production will have to be also done by the users. They will have to create information in data points everywhere in the world around us in order for a lot of information to exist. So that will also at some point have to exist for us to work on and for these experiences to massify. And obviously, in terms of hardware glasses, Apple will launch them 2020, 2021, no more than that. After Apple, everybody will follow up, the ones that don't already have. You can actually already buy the North glasses, by North, you can see the website. It's a simple experience, but you can see the videos that are available online. You can see the first few steps taken in this direction, this experience that are being done when Apple launches. It will not be something like this. It will be something much more usable, as Dan showed on the slides. So that will help massify everything.
So we have about 5 minutes left, and before we finish, I'd like to say that AR may feel overwhelming for a lot of medium to smaller size organizations. So what would be your advice to help individuals and smaller organizations to get started?
I would go download Unity. It's a piece of software that's free. It's been free for a while now, so unity.com, I think, or just Unity 3D used to be.
Unity.com, yes.
Unity.com now. And so I teach a class to students in journalism and all the other communications fields, advertising, PR, like you name it, television and film. And within 3 weeks, they've learned how to create pretty compelling 3D scenes in Unity that work for all the different platforms. So if they can do it, you all can do it. I actually learned myself. I didn't go take a class, even though I teach one. But it's a very popular class, too. The next generation, they understand how, just how compelling this is. It just sort of spreads by word of mouth. I never have to say anything about this. They know that this is the future. So, just that by itself, I think, says that, younger people that you hire into your organizations, they're likely to actually come with some of these skills because the tools are out there, they're free, they're looking for an edge. But you all should be doing it too, and your existing staffs.
Yeah, by the end of my PhD, I'll probably have some answers about that because that's what I'm focusing on. Right now, what I would suggest is to have someone that asks questions in the newsroom, asking questions about this. How can we work our news in this new media? How can we think of new content to produce related to areas that we want to cover and that we don't cover right now in AR? Even talking with commercial departments and asking if it is feasible to develop some experiences with the help of sponsors. Asking questions is the most important thing right now. Obviously, you have to have someone versed on these technologies, but again, it's not that hard. It's the same as we did with podcasts, as we did in video, when we changed our language working on these media. That's what we did. Again, that's what we need to do, is to have someone that understands the potential, understands the language, and ask questions about the content you have already and how you can convert it and produce it and renew it to this new media.
Yes, I fully agree. And then, a lot of users think that these experiences actually cost a lot of money, but everybody can have access to it. The resources are free. As Dan said, Unity 3D is a free 3D platform where you can develop these experiences and then port that directly into the different devices. You also mentioned A-Frame earlier. That's also a free tool that everybody can have access to. There's lots of tutorials out there, so everybody can have access to it. So I know we didn't have a lot of time for questions, but following this panel, Dan will be upstairs at the Lighthouse having a workshop. We'll also be demoing the Magic Leap, so anybody who didn't get a chance to try it, please come up, ask a lot of questions. We'll all be there, and we'll ready to show you what the devices can do.
And it's important, I think, to try this out yourself. So if you have any interest in this, we have a couple devices. see what it feels like to walk through your media in physical space. It's really, because we could describe it over and over and over again, but once you try it, it's like, oh, that's what that is. And I think you'll look at it differently.
Well, thank you very much, Dan and Diego.
Thank you.
I hope this was useful and insightful for you all and getting you excited into immersive media. We're very excited to see what you're going to do, and we're looking forward to see you upstairs to try out these devices. Thank you.
Thank you.